Good morning, Webster Ropes. It's nice to be with you on your computers, on your phones, or wherever you are this Sunday. It's been a while since I've seen many of your beautiful faces, and I miss you all very much. So I'm very glad to be invited to share with you some of the thoughts and stuff that I've been feeling since we've all gone into quarantine, and to be invited to share some words with you this fine Sunday. So it's a really crazy time. There's been a lot of change and a lot of craziness, and the thing that I do when things begin to change is I go back to what I know. So I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos. I've been watching a lot of just like my favorite movies. I've been watching a lot of scary movies because those bring me some sort of comfort, even if I feel very uncomfortable during them. I've been listening to a lot of music that sort of brings me comfort, and one specific thing that's been bringing me a lot of comfort is Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, the musical soundtrack. So I listen to that whenever I go shower, whenever I'm just like need something to listen to. That's what I go to, because it's something that I grew up with. It's something that gives me a lot of comfort and something that brings me a lot of joy. And we could all use a lot of comfort and joy right now, if I do say so myself. And when thinking about what to talk about today, there's a lot of stories in the Bible that I know and I love to go back to and talk about all the time. But I have two very favorite stories from the Bible that I really love to go back to. One, as anyone who knows me will tell you, is Esther. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Esther today. And the other is the book of Job. So that might be less one that you would think about when people associate me with stories in the Bible and stuff. But I grew up with the book of Job. I was in an organization called Job's Daughters for many, many years. And so I ended up growing up hearing the story of Job over and over and over again. And it kind of got nudged into my subconscious somehow. So whenever I go to the Bible, I'm like, I'm either going to be reading the book of Esther or I'm going to be reading the book of Job. And yeah, there's a lot of other stories in there that bring me a lot of hope and comfort in times like these, but Esther and Job are two of my favorites because they both have some very similar traits. They're both about two people who are going through a terrible time and they don't know why. The first is the book of Esther, and Esther is a young girl. She lives with her cousin Mordecai, who is a scribe at the palace. And she eventually becomes queen. And it's kind of a crazy thing because at the same time that she's becoming queen, a man named Haman is plotting against her and her entire group of people because she's Jewish. And in that time period, while Judaism was accepted, it wasn't well liked, to be kind about it. So she and her entire group of people are being plotted against, and they don't know why it's happening. Shouldn't God be there to protect them? Who knows? And we see a similar thing in the book of Job. The book of Job is about a man who loses his entire family in a bet. The adversary, or the devil, bets against God that he can break this man's faith. And Job doesn't lose everyone. He still has his wife, but he loses all of his children. He loses a good portion of his property. He loses so many different things. He loses his health. And he doesn't know why either. Shouldn't God be there? It's so weird. And we're kind of in a time like that right now. We have a virus that's coming around and we honestly don't know much about it. It's a scary time. We don't know much about this virus. We know it's spreading quickly. We know it's coming very rapidly. Its onsets very slowly. You don't even know if you have it or not for maybe even 14 days. And don't quote me on this stuff. I did not go to school to get my degree in biology. But it's a freaky time. Things are changing really quickly and really rapidly. My state that I currently live in, California, is almost completely on lockdown. We're calling it a lockdown, but it's really shelter in place, where you can go out to get essentials, you can go out to exercise, but you really shouldn't be going out at all. And St. Louis just instilled that as well, but we've been under this shelter in place for a few more weeks than St. Louis has. So it's just a scary, scary time, and we don't necessarily see where God is in this. Kind of like in the book of Esther. Esther is famously known for being the only book where God is not mentioned by his name. He's implied to be around. You see people praying, but they never say who they're talking to. They don't say his name. They don't really talk about him. He's just there. And that's kind of comforting to think about. You don't have to necessarily see God to know he's there. You don't have to constantly talk to him on a daily basis to know he's there, but you know he is, which is really nice. And it's a huge comfort when we have all these scary things happening. And even in Job, they do mention God a lot, because that's the whole point of the book, is we are hearing the story of a man who's essentially lost everything because of a bet. But there's one verse that I found in the book of Job. It's Job chapter 33, verses 12 through 17. And it's this. But I tell you that you are wrong in this matter, since God is greater than man. Why do you take him to court for not answering anything a person asks? For God speaks time and again, but a person may not notice. In a dream, a vision in the night, when deep sleep falls on people as they slumber in their beds, he uncovers their ears at this time and terrifies them with warnings in order to turn a person from his actions and suppress his pride. And while it's not necessarily just dreams, it's everywhere. He does. He comes to us time and time again to talk to us. We may not exactly see where he's going with it. We may not recognize it at the time as God speaking to us, but he is. And that's something really amazing. And helps kind of alleviate all those fears. And that's really what I want to say today. God is always there. God is always with us, always watching us, making sure that we're okay, even if we don't see him, even if we're not talking to him all the time, even if we don't necessarily think about him all the time. He thinks about us all the time. He's with us all the time. I sometimes think of something that Chris said. She has a ring or a piece of jewelry that has feet on it. And she tells us the parable of walking in the sand, where a person is walking in the sand with God and they see two sets of footprints. But then when things get rough, they only see one set. And eventually, once they get past that rough part, that second set comes back and they say, God, where were you? Where were you during this time? And God says to them, this is that when you only saw the one set of footprints, that was when I carried you. So as you leave this message today, as you go forth into the world, just remember, God's always there. Have a good Sunday, y'all.